Welcome to Uptown Voices. From Harlem to the Heights to the northern tip of Inwood, we're here to celebrate our people and together seek solutions for the difficult issues we're all confronting as neighbors. Regardless of what hood you represent, we share the same goal, creating the best community we can, somewhere to enjoy, where we can build our lives and raise our children. We want to thank 181 Cabrini, located on the corner of 181st Street and Cabrini Boulevard, for its generous support for this podcast. It's your neighborhood bistro just steps away from the North Walk of the GWB. Stay tuned for a discount code that you can mention to your bartender or server the next time you visit the restaurant.
What up, everyone? It's Lev Black of the Uptown Collective. There's another Uptown Voices podcast with my brother Octavio Blanco, and we have my good friend, the executive director of the West Harlem Development Corporation, a serial entrepreneur, just an all-around, community person that just been involved with so much, means so much to Uptown, Washington Heights OG, my brother Zead Ramadan. Zead, how you doing, brother?
Excellent, man. Good to be with you guys.
Oh, I'm gonna say that you're Palestinian, but you're also honorary Dominican too. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? You're as Dominican as I am. You know what I'm saying? That's right, brother. That's right. So, yeah, what's up, brother? How you doing, man?
Pretty good, man. Good to be alive. Good to be here with you guys.
Gotcha. And we'll start with the West Harlem Development Corporation, and then we'll go back. Tell us about what the West Harlem Development Corporation, what it does, what it brings to the community.
Well, the West Harlem Development Corporation it's important to understand that it was created by the CBA, the Community Benefits Agreement, or the agreement between Columbia University and the community, especially the West Harlem District Community Board 9, because when Columbia University, grabbed 17 acres of land in order to build this 21st century campus, they wanted to do a give back to the community, and that was the compromise where they kind of they invested about $150 million. $74 million of it was like hard coded. 76 was in cash under the control of a board of directors. And that board of directors was going to create all sorts of programs to help the community. I was on the board for 8 years. Now I've been the executive director for 6 years, and pretty much, creating programs, creating non-for-profit organizations to serve the West Harlem community primarily.
That's amazing.
That's really interesting. So what is the WHDC's mission? Can you tell us what your mission is?
Isn't that the one that always catches people like, I don't know my own mission. No, the mission, really in a nutshell, I could read it out for you, but I mean, the mission is a nutshell, is to think of creative ways to help the community in the fields of like housing, economic development, social services, the youth, education. It really is, we can, the board of directors can decide to do and invest in programs in any way that we feel, or the board of directors feels could enhance, educate, and uplift the community. And
wow,
that's something that, we take very seriously. And I always say we, because I was on the board for 8 years and we were kind of all a mind together when we work. And, we've done things like, so you say like, okay, so well, how have you done that? I think that's a really important question. Well, we discovered that, West Harlem, or Community Board 9 area, which goes from 110th Street to 105th Street, from St. Nicholas Avenue, Morningside, St. Nick, all the way to the Hudson River, that they never had an arts organization serve the artists. An art organization is it, like NOMA, which I helped found in Washington Heights. Well, we created something called the West Harlem Arts Alliance. And the West Harlem Arts Alliance now serves all the artists and art groups in West Harlem. It's a resource. It's like a one-stop shop to help, to bring technical assistance to artists to create or discover or look for gallery space and bring West Harlem artists out into the light, because in every community there's like brilliant artistry, brilliant ideas, brilliant art groups. And a lot of times they can't find the venue, the resources. Well, this organization, just like NOMA, just like Harlem Arts Alliance, produces resources for the local community. One other thing we're really proud of that we did is we started another organization called the West Harlem Older Adults Association. Now, basically, again, and historically, there's a lot of senior centers, what they call senior centers, older adult centers, and they were never kind of linked. They never kind of worked together really well and everything. And we thought it would be a good idea to create kind of like a council, like a round table of all the executive directors and the leaders of those things, so they can start working together, figuring out what works, what doesn't work. And then WHDC would also offer programs like opportunities for seniors in those centers to go to things like a Broadway play, to go to a museum, to go have a barbecue on Randall's Island with a jazz band and a real barbecue setup and serve 400 people at a time,
Wow.
with buses and everything.
I want to go there.
So does I wanted to go there too. But, these things are incredible. My mom is 90 and my mom is like, listen, just get me out of the house and I'm good. Right. And what you
Right.
realize is when you ask older people, like, what's the thing? It's like, look, I just don't want to sit inside and play checkers all the time, or you guys throw a palette in front of me and I have to paint, or, we want to do something more active. We want to do things that everybody else does, but we're
Yeah.
kind of like, so we create opportunities. We took them to a Met game this year. We took them to a Yankee game this year. They went to the Jackie Robinson Museum and they came back and some of them were gone, like, we thought he was just a baseball player. We didn't know he was like a civil rights leader. It's like, so that, the educational component. And one thing that WHDC loves doing is investing into the community, right? So there was a program that I loved. We sent 500 seniors to go see Mama, I Wanna Sing,
Wow.
written by a Harlemite, performed at El Museo del Barrio.
Wow.
So the money was going to benefit Museo del Barrio, Mama, I Wanna Sing, from the community, in the community.
Yeah.
And we love that. We love that all the funding, like we love it the most when the funding is. So one time the senior council said, listen, is it all right if we were to get together, in mass and listen to jazz somewhere or Afro-Latino beats? We said, yeah. And they said, where do you think we should do it? I said, Harlem School of the Arts. That way, Harlem School of the Arts gets this big rental. They have 200 people come in. They have a live jazz or a live Afro-Latino group, and the people were jamming and dancing. We had some food there for them, and they just had the time of their lives. But the thing is, that's the thing. We want to create a really healthy, enriching, educational experience for the seniors of our community. And we do the same thing for the youth. We just pummel them with program after program, whether it be educational, whether it be artistic. If you're into we had like Goldman Sachs people come in to let you, give them information about what the finance world is like. We had them do food security, like knowledge, like why is it better to purchase natural food and cook it yourself, and what's the math behind that? How to spend intelligently as opposed to, so financial literacy for teenagers, and these things. And then we give them a stipend, like if they come to our summer program at Boys and Girls Club of Harlem. So, what we try to do is, and we work with the Riverside Hawks. They open up their gyms, 6 gyms, and then kids in the community who don't have a chance, like during the cold weather, to go anywhere to get exercise, they can go there, and we pay the Riverside Hawks to open up their gyms, use their coaches to lecture them. We even had the New York Liberty go and do basketball. What are they called?
A scrimmage?
Yeah. We had them do basketball teachings, with girls teams and boys teams in high schools and junior high schools in West Harlem. We had
That's
personnel
amazing.
there. They gave them T-shirts, water bottles, and they trained them, and these are things that are done for their mental health, for teamwork, for their physical health, and to train and to understand that, with all this education and hard work, we want our youth to grow up to be, constructive and brilliant parts of our society. And so we do whatever we can to invest in those kinds of programs to help them.
So it's
So those are
more
some of the things that we do.
It's awesome. It's more than just, well, it's different from what you might think traditional economic empowerment is, right? It's much, I think it sounds like you have a looser, I hate to use this word, but a looser leash in terms of like how you direct your monies that I think that maybe an empowerment zone might have. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between what you're doing and an empowerment zone? Because I know that you were also really involved with UMES, and that gave you a great sort of view of the district, and you really understand the nuts and bolts. But how does your current position sort of differ from what you were doing with UMES?
Yeah, I was on the UMES board for 10 years. And I once headed the human capital. That human capital sounds so weird to me, but
I know it's a weird word.
I saw it as like job creation, right? So UMES was created by Bill Clinton and Charlie Rangel, and they basically offered urban areas in America, different cities, an opportunity. And they said, look, we can give you $100 million or $50 million or so much money, but your state has to match that and your city has to match that. So New York City said, we'll take 100 because New York City will give you 100 and then New York State will give you 100. So now we just got $300 million. And this was supposed to be invested in a grid that was specifically socioeconomic. It was for people who were in need. It was like poverty line to like low socioeconomic, financial status. So that way the money went into rehabbing the community, creating businesses, giving loans to businesses in order to start off. So if you look at Frederick Douglass Boulevard, for instance, I remember growing up, Frederick Douglass Boulevard was a hard place, man. It was tough. Now look at Frederick Douglass Boulevard. It's got all beautiful spots because we had a program where we created look, if you have a dream to start a business, you put in 50%. We'll give you a loan for the other 50% and you pay us back at a reasonable rate over time. And a lot of these people couldn't live out those dreams because they couldn't get loans from a bank. They didn't qualify, but we invested into the people and into their businesses. Next thing you know, you have a sushi place, you have a coffee place, you have a burger place, you have a
Melba's is there, yeah.
You have a Melba's place, yeah. So we invested into all these little businesses, and all of a sudden we had 50 businesses pop up, and it turned it around into like, hey, that's my hood. This is Harlem, and it's a beautiful community, right? But at one time it was really dark. Like a lot of times, people didn't go down those streets. But and look at like 125th Street, sort of like the Renaissance post 2000. It's changed, and a lot of that came through the investment of the empowerment zone. And it wasn't just investing, right? It was kind of like leveraging the money. So it's kind of foundations, other parts of the government would say, hey, we like what you're doing there, and we have a job creation program. Could we chip in, $50 million into that $100 million program? Because we want to be, you guys are very successful, and we want to tag along with you so people can understand that we're invested into that as well. And we want that kind of positive PR. So we were able to leverage with the $300 million, and they're still going, right? They leveraged over $1 billion of other money. So when you think about, you just go, $100 million did all that to Harlem? It's like, no. And Washington Heights and Inwood in some areas, right? You go, no, we leveraged government, elected officials, chipped in, foundations, philanthropies, and all of them chipped in because we would like sell them on these beautiful projects and say, Magic Johnson Theater, for instance, right? That came through some UMES support from the very beginning. Matt, we brought a celebrity in, we got a theater group, because we don't have that many recreational areas in northern Manhattan when you really think about it. And I mean like North or Central Park, right? I grew up in Washington Heights, right? And I played baseball in college, but I couldn't tell you when I played baseball on a field. I played baseball on concrete most of my life. They built the field. In fact, I cut the ribbon as a community board chair for the Highbridge Park when we created that AstroTurf field, the Little League field, and we created the one beside J. Hood Wright Park, north of J. Hood Wright Park, where Manny Ramirez famously practiced, right? So that
yeah.
happened like, we used to play wherever we could find a patch of dirt, that's where we played ball. And so, like, think about Washington Heights and a movie theater. Where's there a movie theater in Washington Heights and Inwood to go see a movie? I used to go to the San Juan Theater, which was where the Malcolm X Museum was in the 70s, to go watch movies. It doesn't exist anymore. If you want to go to the movies in Washington Heights, you have to wait for the United Palace to do something special or leave the district.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you
If
have to
you want
go
to
over the
play
bridge,
baseball, think about it,
go
right? We
downtown.
live in the urban area. If you wanted to play baseball, you had to go all the way down to Riverside Drive.
Right.
And if you're a kid and you're a young teenager, your family wants you to cross the highway and go on the weird roads, and you're so far away from home, and anything can happen. And so that wasn't a very easy thing for us, right? In Brooklyn and Staten Island and Queens, there's like 100 baseball fields. Those little leagues are so good, because they have access. We didn't have access. So the Magic Johnson Theater was a really important thing to create. And by the way, the seniors once said, we want to see the new Whitney Houston movie. And I said, got it. We rented the whole theater and we sent 500 people, made sure that each one of them got popcorn and a beverage, and they were like, we saw the Whitney Houston movie before anybody, and they loved it, but so we do things that are culturally, relevant and that people want to do. But also UMES, helped develop that. West Harlem Development Corporation can do a lot of other things. We don't have that kind of money to build giant structures, a Cadillac dealership at the end of 125th Street, like UMES did. They financed that. We don't have a small loan program to all the businesses so businesses can thrive, but we try to figure out ways to create economic development and jobs. So, one of the key ways was really, the CBG is our flagship project, which is a community-based grant. I would say the last 5 years, we averaged giving out approximately $2 million a year to over 100 non-for-profits, in West Harlem and nonprofits who serve West Harlem. So if you're, for example, on Frederick Douglass Boulevard, right, or Adam Clayton, and you have a non-for-profit that does work with artists, or you have something that can educate the community, we say, if you come to our community in West Harlem and you get 50 people, 100 people, we'll give you a grant to do that. If you do yoga at senior centers, okay, good. We'll give you $10,000 to do yoga at these 14 senior centers. Now we just put you in touch with the executive directors and you take it from there. And then you send us your schedule to make sure that we know that you're doing with the money that we're giving you. So that's just an example, but we do that. And so our grants go to non-for-profits. They could be several people run. There's some non-for-profits that have like 4 people are running the not-for-profit, and they'll get 250 people to come to an educational seminar at a place, in West Harlem. And that's wonderful because that creates opportunities, it creates knowledge, it creates other ideas, and that snowballs into other things. And we also really try to inspire collaboration. Our motto is solution through collaboration.
Yeah.
And it's true because you also make space available through the Columbia, right? There's an in-kind space available, which is really amazing. So you can have a world-class place to do your event, through you guys.
So one of the programs that, is we have an in-kind program. Columbia University committed $20 million worth of like credit. It's not real dollars, right? It's kind of like, hey, there's this like number 20 million, and you could use it. In kind means like it's not cash, but it's intellectual, or it's usage of space or usage of equipment. So for example, Columbia has all these new theaters and rooms and boardrooms and conference rooms, and you could use these spaces. Let's say you're a theater group and you want to do a performance in front of 200 people. Well, there's about 3 or 4 theaters you can choose from. We always try to couple you with the one that meets your capacity needs. Like if you say, I'm doing 50, can I use the one for 400? We go, no, you can use the one for 100, because, what are you going to do? You're going to be floating around in there. So we want to make sure that people get what they want, right? use it, and it has to be for the betterment of the community, and you can't charge people. So if we're going to let you use these spaces, now Columbia will turn around and charge us for the space. They might say, hey, you want that 200-person theater? Well, the rental fee is, let's say, $5,000. Then usage of this other equipment is $1,000. And then usage of personnel that are required is another $1,000. So it might be a $7,000 rental for the day for that theater, but that's $20 million minus $7,000. Now we do this on a monthly basis, and you could apply at our website, westharlemdc.org, or Columbia University's. All you have to do is go to Columbia University and look for in-kind program with WHDC, and their page will come up, and you can apply to that. If you're a not-for-profit, have to be from West Harlem, resident or this, but there's a program for the betterment of the West Harlem community. And then you can apply. You go there and you'll see the criteria. I'm not covering it all, but you can go there and you could rent spaces. So if you're a non-for-profit, you could rent space. If you're not from West Harlem, you have to collaborate with a not-for-profit from West Harlem to be able to use that space, and or say this program is specifically for West Harlem groups, or invite them in, and they have to be the majority. But you'll see the criteria on our website. But that's a very important program.
Hey, go ahead, Led. Go ahead.
No, and I wanted to go back to Washington Heights because, we got to establish, your OG status. What block you from, Ziad? Let people know. Let people know.
Yo, in 71, I lived on. That's when I came to the country when I was 5 years old. I lived just for a minute, like a hot minute. I lived on 173rd in Fort Wash, right across the street from the entrance of J. Hood Wright Park. And then for another 2 years, we lived on 173rd in St. Nick, right behind Riviera Funeral Home.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the little house behind Riviera wasn't there. It was an alley where they would back up the hearses and bring out the bodies. And I lived on the third floor. So when I was like 8 years old, I used to look out the window and see the bodies coming in like at night. It used to be very, very creepy. Yeah, very, very creepy. But and so we lived there. Then we moved up to 66 Post Avenue. A lot of people in Northern Manhattan don't know Post Avenue. It's only like 4 blocks long from Dykeman to 207. So that makes it 7 blocks long. And I lived on Post Avenue, and I went there for elementary school to PS 98. And then we moved where we stayed for the majority of my life, which was 77th and Pinehurst, right there in the corner, 2 North Pinehurst, which is 177th and Pinehurst Avenue. And that put me a block away from J. Hood Wright Park. I'm back in the hood, right? And that's where I learned how to play baseball, football, basketball, everything. That's where I got into trouble. That's where, me and my friends would run down down to Riverside Drive Riverside Park. And I eventually went to junior high school 52. I went to Kennedy, and then I went to City College when I was 16 years old.
Wow, it's young.
Wow.
Yeah. I skipped a grade. I went from 7th to 9th grade. I was in this program called Special Progress. I went from 7th to 9th grade, and my birthday was late. So when I got in September, my birthday was in October. I was still 16.
Wow.
And so I was 16 years old, and I was tiny. I graduated in Kennedy. The graduating class was 1,049, and I was 5th online as like one of the shortest guys. Yeah, one of the shortest guys in the
One of the
school.
longest graduation ceremonies. I'm sure you have to wait for all those people.
So our graduation ceremony was at Carnegie Hall.
Wow.
Yeah, it was huge. And then the junior high school 52, we had it at Riverside Church, and that holds thousands of people as well. But it was, but I loved it, man. I grew up, and it's funny. I was an Arab when I came to this country. I didn't know how to speak English. Within 2 years, I spoke better than like most Americans, because you just rambling on. But a very funny thing. So I have sort of a real uptown sway to my talk. And my son says to me, "Hey, Dad, man, why do you talk like that?" Because, and I said, it's funny. You know who reminds me of me when I talk is Adriano Espaillat,
Mm-hmm.
because he has this real uptown. Yeah, man. So the other day, and I said, that's how I talk. Why? Because I grew up right near the Dykeman houses. Post is right on the block from the Dykeman houses, and
Yeah.
all my best friends were black. So the people who taught me English were really my black friends. Because after school, my Irish friends lived in Isham Street in that area, right? And my Latino friends, the the Puerto Ricans who were there, you know, and my new Dominican friends, forget it. We were hustling English at the same time. We were trying to figure out the language at the same time. So the only people who knew it really well that lived around us, because we lived in the part that was of color, was our black friends. So all my friends, Derek Stewart, Claude Elmore, Adrian Adams, and all my sisters, the same thing, It was really funny. So I had that thing. And we also were into music. Let me tell you, if there's one thing that can tell you the timeline of my life and how I understand America and everything, absolutely through music. And it started out with Soul Train and Motown. I was one of 7, so we had our own Soul Train line in my house. It's like
I was going to ask you about that. You're 7. You're one of 7.
one of 8.
Or you're one of 8. You're one of 8. Living in Manhattan. How do you do that? Like, Manhattan is not known for having. I mean, look, I know that Washington Heights and Inwood, they do have some big apartments, but still, like, one of 8. What was that like? Like,
Bro,
I can imagine.
It looked like army barracks, bro. We had double bunk beds everywhere. It looked like an army barrack. It was like double bunk, double bunk, double bunk. And someone had to sleep on my brothers got older. They had to sleep in the living room, pull out. It was, man, we hustled like immigrants did, and my father, had 3 jobs. He was a baker. He was a master, a baker. He could make and he was, in Washington Heights, it was kind of new. People were making 6-tier wedding cakes at the time. And it's really funny. He started working for a Dominican baker named Sucrati. And I never put it in my head that Sucrati meant Socrates.
Socrates. Yeah.
So, Sucrati, and eventually Sucrati retired, and my father purchased the bakery and never changed the name of it. It was on 164th and Broadway, and it was called La Mano de Oro.
Wow.
It was called La Mano de Oro Bakery. And some people come up to me and they go, "That's your dad with the silver hair? Oh, man, he used to lean over the counter and give me a cake every time after church." I said, yeah. Every time after church, I get out of school, my mom bought bread there. And, your father introduced kibbeh to the community because we were Arab, and my mom made kibbeh. And so it was really, really incredible, And the irony is we ended up opening up a cafe in the very next block. My father said, "Whatever you do, I don't want you to be bakers, because I got to wake up in the middle of the night. I never see my kids. I go home at 10 o'clock. And so we all got into our different professions, but ended up opening up the X Cafe halfway up the block from him. I mean, that was the real ironies of our lives. My dad came to the country as a baker on 164th Street, right next to where Presidente is, with that pizza shop next to it. That's exactly.
Yeah, but Presidente's gone, right? Presidente's not there no more.
Yeah, that's right. I said Presidente.
Yeah.
And that's old school stuff.
Yeah. That's what was it? It's Fort Washington. I like that place too, though.
Yeah. So it's Fort Washington. My wife said it's good.
It's pretty good.
Had a chance myself, but so my father had a cafe there. We ended up owning the X Cafe from 97 till 2020.
Wow.
So, yeah, but we all came from different trades, college graduates or working with cars and stuff. And we ended up opening up what New York One called the first downtown style cafe, Uptown. So it's really funny. Whenever I see Anika Pergament on New York One, she's been one of the anchors forever. I was like, she came to my cafe in about 2000 when she was 20-something years old, and she was just cutting her teeth. And they sent her up to Washington Heights, and she was looking around. And I said, "Why did you open this up here?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "This is really fancy with the red curtains and the velvet this and the stained glass tables and the fancy food." And I said to her, "Remember, I grew up in the community, right?" And I said, "Where do you think this should be?" And she goes, "Downtown." And I said, Well, why do people downtown deserve all this luxury and my community doesn't? And by the
Right.
way, I whispered in her ear, like, look, I open up a garbage joint, they're going to connect that to my name. And all these people know us here. It's like, there's
Yeah.
8 of us, so at some point in some generation, everybody passing through the street knows one of the Ramadans. And so I can't open up a place and slurry my dad's good name. So we had to keep it real. And so she goes, and I'm here in the first downtown style cafe, Uptown. It's called the X Cafe.
That's
And
amazing. What year was that it opened up, Ziad?
opened up in 97.
So it's funny then when you think about it, that really was ahead of the curve, right? Like it really does belong there with Arca and all those people that were really kind of
We were before
really
them.
Yeah, you were before them, which is amazing.
In fact, when I became the chair of the community board and I became the chair of the Economic Development Committee first, which approved all of the licenses, I would always, I might have 15 applications, people, applying for license, and I would welcome them to the committee and I would say, ladies and gentlemen, we live in this community. I would give them a speech all the time. I really drilled it home. I said, ladies and gentlemen, we live in this community. We need to beautify this community because our parents live here. Our grandparents came here. Our children live here. So if you're trying to decide whether you should nickel and dime on the design of your place, my advice to you is invest that extra $1,000 into the design, get that better fabric, make it more beautiful because you're going to be proud of it. And you're not going to say, I regret not doing that back then, right? Because now people say, this place is all right. You don't want it to be all right. You want to say, this is my place. My name is Rodriguez. And I opened up this place and people love it. People like the way it looks. And thank God I spent that extra $1,000 because I made that back in 2 weeks or whatever it is, right? But I made that back. And so I always told them to invest a little bit more into the community in order for you to be proud of it, for the community to be proud of your place, and to make this place better for our community.
Led, I think now it's time to take a short pause so that we can pay some of the bills. We are lucky to have a great sponsor, 181 Cabrini. It's our neighborhood bistro. Both Led and I are just steps away from 181 Cabrini, and we love it. 181 Cabrini is located right there on that corner of 181 and Cabrini, just steps away.
181 and Cabrini.
Just steps away from the bridge. So, yeah, I love it. Led, you and I were there the other night.
Yeah, and we also met there for the first time. You and I, the first time we met, we had lunch there, and it's my local bar now. Since you and I both live right around. It's my local bar. I spend a lot of time there. James Lee, the owner, is just an incredible restaurateur. Right, I think he's a great guy. He's super funny, but the food is on point. So please hit up 181 Cabrini. It is really one of my favorite spots. 181 Cabrini, pull up. That's my spot. Show them love and tip well.
Well, can I just ask? Because it sounds like your dad being a baker, that's almost like an essential job in a neighborhood. And so I wonder if his being a baker and his own connection with, the moms and the grandmas and the people coming into the bakery, did that open doors for you and your family? Because the question that I have is whether or not you experienced prejudice because of being Arab in the neighborhood, or how did you acclimate? Because, let's face it, this is I just want to know, because to me, it sounds like you and your family were welcomed with open arms by the community. And, I'm just curious to hear about how your culture kind of played a part in your standing in the community.
Well, you could look at the screens and you and I could be relatives. You could be my brother, right?
Yeah.
And I have a brother who looks like Led, right? In fact, my Dominican employee, I had the Dominican employees, they'd be like, oye, ese tu hermano, el moreno, ¿no? De qué papá? And I'd be like, that's the same. And they'd be like, this is your darker brother, man. Where, you got a different dad? And I go, no, same guy, same guy. But we grew up in Kuwait, and Kuwait was very diverse. And my parents are Muslim, and in our faith, they really and they weren't scholars. They were refugees. They're Palestinian born. They were born in 30 and 36, I believe. And they had to emigrate from their towns and forcibly. And my dad was on the West Bank. My mom was in a town called Jimzo that kind of no longer exists, and from 48. And well, in our culture, first of all, we have all different colors. I have cousins with afros. I had one with dreads down his butt, and then I have really blonde cousins, because if you really think about that land that was Palestine, everybody stepped on it. The Europeans, the Africans, the Asians, the Mongols. And so you had this mix of communities over the millennia. So I never looked at a black guy and thought he was funny. In fact, a black friend of mine, he said to me, "Hey, Z, I want to ask you something." Yeah. He goes, "When I said hello to your kids, they came and they gave me a hug and this, he goes, I don't get that from white people." And I said, "Well, you just called me white." I said, "You just called me white, first of all. We haven't." I said, but the issue is, yeah, because, we don't teach our kids to look at that. We teach kids to look at the content of a human interactions, and that's it. And that's what we do. Hopefully that's what most people do, but so we never looked. And my mom, let me tell you something. Let me tell you this one story that kind of will define the issue. I'm about 7 years old. We're fresh in America. My mom's in the subway, and we're on 168th Street. I remember the majestic tiles, and I'm looking around and crowds going by, and a short man, what we called a midget back then, walked by, and I bugged out. I don't know if I ever saw him. And so I said, "Mom, look at that. Look at that, small guy." And my mom yanked my hand and got really close to my face. And she said, this is exactly what she said. I'll never forget it, because I never forgot it. And it became sort of my mantra. She said, "He is a creation of God like you are. You are no better than him, no matter whether he be tall or big or black or white or small or green or yellow or blue. You are no better than anybody else here. And the only thing that defines you is the work that you do, and if you're a good human being." And I was just like, damn. She just and that was it. And that stuck with me the rest of my life. And I became very affable in college, and I got along. It was really funny. I was one of the few people in college that would get invited to the white frats, the black frats, the Jewish frat, the Spanish frat. I was asked to pledge every black frat at Stony Brook except Alpha Phi Alpha. Every Latino frat, every white frat. People thought I was in a frat, and I was never in any frats, because they said to me, why don't you join a frat?" And I said, "Because I get along with everybody." I spoke Spanish to my, Latino guys. I played baseball with them. My black friends, I was very comfortable. I went to reggae parties. My best friend from college till this day is from Brooklyn, and he's Jamaican, and he became a colonel and an eye doctor. We came through similar backgrounds, rough and tumble immigrant communities, but we made it out, we made it out. And, but so as far as it would look, when I was growing up on the baseball, I told you I was really, really small, right? That was the biggest prejudice I ever got. "Oye, chiquitín." And I always was made to bat. Laugh.
Chiquiting.
They always called me chiquitín, right? And they were like,
Chiquiting is hilarious.
"This guy can't be good, right? Because he's too small."
Mm-hmm.
Instead, I'm 130 pounds, 16 years old, throwing 85 miles per hour in college. But you wouldn't think that. But the only way I got good is playing with my Dominican friends. And to me, I used to emulate Dominican shortstops, how smooth they were, and I was just I copied them, exactly. And I looked at where their head was when they caught the ball. And so that Dominican culture really helped me understand the game and help propel me. And look, in every culture, we have good and bad, right? So my mom used to always tell me, like I said, my parents weren't educated at all, but they had really deep philosophies. My mom would say, "Look, you have to be like a screen. If there's something bad that you see doing, screen that out. But if there's something in their culture that's really good, take it in." And she goes, and do that with everything in life. And I used to be like, wow, that's really clever. So in every culture, if there's something, yo, let's go do this, let's go do that. So I'd be like, maybe not. But it's like, teach me, how do you swing again? But some parts of the culture that were really helpful, I tried to take in. So, and I love the Dominican culture. I love Dominican history. I love the Dominican country, and like it's part of my life. My son thinks he's Dominican. He he's born in Washington Heights at Columbia. We have a little place in DR, and we go there since he was born. And he has the Dominican shorts on Dominican Day Parade. He has the flag. He has the hat, the bandana. He had braids, everything. It's
That's
really
funny.
funny. But yeah, I swear to God, he thinks he's more Dominican than he is Palestinian.
That's hilarious.
You
But
familiar with Mo Amer?
Of course. Yeah, he's a riot.
He's great.
I met him before.
You guys have like a very similar story there, where he's from like Houston, and all the cholos are like, "Yo, why don't you come and join our gang?"
I love that show. I love that show.
Yeah,
Have you seen his stand-up? His stand-up is awesome.
He's
His
hilarious.
stand-up is
I went to see him
awesome.
last May, actually. He's pretty tight. He's funny as hell. But it's like he has that Mexican connection through Houston, right? I have the Dominican connection through Washington Heights. When I went to college, it was funny. I'd have some friends from Mexico and around there. They're like, "Oh, yeah, vato, listen to the way this guy talks. He talks like a Dominican." They're like, I would say, they teach me some stuff in like, a Mexican dialect, like how to say raccoon. They would say mapache, and that's like an Aztec word, right? But like people don't use that normally. But I would know how to talk colloquial like they did, and then my Spanish friends, I learned Spain from that. It takes me about 3 days when I go to a different Latin country to acclimate to their accents. Then after that, I'm like, oh yeah, say on.
But Ziad, I want to ask, like, everything you've been involved in is always about like uplifting community. Why is that? Where does that come from, you think? And why does that matter to you so much?
Very few people know this story. So I got into college when I was 16. I took a career exploration course. And it's almost like psychoanalyzing you to try to figure out what you want to do. You take a whole semester. There's a class in college, a whole semester trying to figure out what your essence is and what you're all about, so you can figure out what direction you want to go to. If you like sciences, if you like, soft sciences, if you like art, if you like, what direction am I going to go to by finding the sectors, anything. And at the end of the semester, they gave us an 800 questionnaire.
Wow.
And then they gave us a 1,000. It took us a week to fill out the 1,000 questionnaire. You have to add 1,000 questions. Read the question, answer, like, do you like working in cubicles? Do you like working with people? Do you like working with 5 or more people? And this just went on forever. Do you like science? Do you like math? What was your best math grade? So they took these questionnaires and they sent them to 2 computers. I believe the social science spots in the country at the time were University of Michigan and I think University of Minnesota. And they sent them to the 2 social science, departments there, who was conducting a study. And then they would regurgitate, the computers would regurgitate all your answers, and bing, it spat out an answer of what your future should be, what your perfect occupation was. Mine, both computers spat out the same thing.
And what was it?
Priest.
What?
Clergy. It said, one said clergy, social worker. The other one said priest, clergy.
Wow, that's interesting.
And so I've always been, it's like my nature. My wife says, why are you stopping? Like somebody asked me a question. She goes, why are you stopping and telling him the history of the answer? It's kind of like, I can't help myself, it's like, so, why should I walk in this direction? Well, you're going to see this, 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 and this, and this. And people are like, I just need to get there, bro. But I can't help, but it's really, I spent, since I got on the community board in 98 and I discovered how to help, sort of people. Within 2 years, I was the chair of the community board. I think I'm one of the youngest chairs they've ever had, if not the youngest chair they ever had. And I actually, and then I knew our community and what it needed because I grew up in it, right? So I remember I gave the first cabaret license in 30 years to Umbrella.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
And it was a real fight in the community, especially with the older generation. They're like, we don't want these clubs and this noise and this, that. And I said to them, I went clubbing in the 80s and I was taking the Iron Horse home at 3 and 4 in the morning, getting home it was horrible for us. It's like for young people, it's just dreadful to, have a good time. Like, we're going to do it anyway. You did it. I remember asking an elected official who was, powerful and very much against it. I said to him, didn't you tell me that you danced with Malcolm X at the Audubon Ballroom once? He goes, yeah, we used to go dancing there all the time. I said, aha, gotcha. You went dancing all the time. This is a Dominican community. How could you deprive the young Dominican people from dancing? And he was like, yeah. I said, bro, it's part of the culture. You can't tell you. First of all, it's part of our youth and it's part of our culture. So as a community board chair, I made the argument. I didn't make it on just like we want to dance and party thing. I made it on the economic development angle. I said, each one of these young people, 25-year-old, whatever it is, when they go downtown, they're spending at least $50 to $100. At least.
At least.
And if they're spending at least that much, and there's this many teenagers in our community that leave the district to spend the money, that accounts for over $1 million on a Friday night that they're spending downtown. I would rather them spend it in our businesses uptown. We're convincing people at the community board to open up beautiful businesses. They're opening up beautiful businesses, but every time somebody wants to celebrate a birthday, sweet 16, anything, a wedding, leave the district. So all of our money is leaving the district, being spent, and you come home to sleep. And at that time, if you remember, a lot of the Dominican restaurants were cafeterias, right? They're just like, you sit on a rolling seat, they open up the silver thing and they go, Ipagueti, arroz, abuela, guisada, oye, get the, what do you want? But now I started convincing people to open up sit-down restaurants so we can compete with south of 96th Street. And we started getting things like Guadalupe.
Juana. Oh, yeah, I remember Guadalupe.
Guadalupe, then I have Mama Juana. I gave them, I supported their license against a big backlash against them. And I basically said, listen, I grew up not too far from, we also lived on 204th and Post. I knew Inwood like the back of my hand. I said, look, and if anybody remembers, there was drug dealing happening on that block pretty extensively. And I said, either you can have the drug dealers hold up that block for another decade, right? Or we can have some economic development, restaurant, effervescent scene. I know there's a problem potentially with both. I prefer the one that has less crime.
You know what? I'm blown away by this, yeah, because the fact that you were instrumental in Mama Juana, right? Like when you think about what Mama Juana did to Dykeman, right? It was the pioneer on that block and everything. And open up that whole strip. You know what I mean? Like, and it's funny because, I grew up on Wadsworth. I grew up the hill, right? But I didn't go down to Dykeman because, as you know, we used to have those stupid petty beefs, right? That I couldn't go down the hill. But to me, Dykeman was a backwater, right? But that Mama Juana opened it up. The Dykeman strip is the center of it. Really the center of when it used to be one of the first. Now it's Dykeman, and you had a hand in that. That's amazing, man.
I went to wash my car right on Dykeman Street, right down the block and I stopped and I looked at the stores. I'm really bummed out that the Parkview Diner closed, by the way. I was shocked. I stood in front of it and I was like, it looks dark in there. What's going on? The door's closed. I went in. I said, what? I just saw it open a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
But I stopped there and I looked.
They were having a problem with their sewage, I think. There was like an issue there. Something.
I don't know, but I thought they had some of the best brunches in Uptown. The Go Green omelet was one of my favorites, man.
Yeah,
But
man.
I just looked at that block. You know, you had Mama Sushi, but that was big for us. And the marina, we lobbied the park department to, stop fussing and do something with the marina. And,
Yeah.
the marina went through its trials and tribulations. It went through its like La Marina on a yacht, Jay-Z days, to where it was like super hype, but some bad things happened. And now it's kind of stabilized to more of a community thing. But, we got that up and running, and, just a lot of the first dirt bike riding trail behind
Yeah.
Washington. I ribbon cut that. Ribbon
That's
cut
amazing.
the Manny Ramirez field. These were all things that, in the early 2000s, we really advocated for. And it was really important because I think that Washington Heights and our district was one of the few, if not the only district in the year 2000 to 2010 that experienced a 10% economic development growth in the state of New York. I remember seeing a stat. Marty Collins showed it to me, I think. And the funny thing is, in that period, it was either me or Marty Collins and maybe one other person for a couple of years that was the economic development chair of Community Board 12. But that's because we really wanted to help bring our community along in a responsible way, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, hey, why is the money leaving the district? Because we don't have the facilities for weddings. Well, hey, somebody build it and we'll support you. We don't have these nice restaurants where I could take my daughter on her sweet 16 with her friends. Well, you know, start opening it up and we'll start supporting it, and that was really, really vital for us. And to me, I know that investing into your own community is the key. And having the money go here. When EDC said they wanted to build a parking lot on 108, we lobbied for a parking lot because all the schools were there, because people were going around like vultures looking for a parking spot all night long. We said, listen, we want a 6-story parking lot on 184th and Broadway. EDC said, okay. And we said, we want a developer from our community that looks like us. Don't have somebody parachute in from another community that doesn't look like us, and you give them, and they make the money off of our community. We want so Jose Espinal got the deal, with ET Management. And so we got a Dominican developer from our community to develop the 6th-floor parking lot. And he goes, man, I need an anchor tenant. And we, it was, I'll never forget, me and Marty Collins sat and said, what could be a big tenant that could pay a big rent, but we don't want to hurt the local merchants. We don't want a Home Depot because they would kill every ferreteria, right?
Right.
We don't want a CVS because they can kill, all the little mom and pop St. Jesus pharmacy on 1st Street, right? We wanted our people to keep the money in their pocket. Staples. Nobody does office equipment in Washington Heights. It was literally like that. I go, Marty, call Staples. Marty came back to me that day and said, yo, they're going to send the rep down this week. I was like, what? It really happened? And so next thing you know, Staples has been there for all this time.
Yeah, and Staples it's an asset too for the businesses of the community, right? Which is great for
all
shipping, for all those things. Yeah.
All the schools, office equipment. And so we were able to connect them to all the yeshivas and the schools in the area. And now everybody can get their office equipment from there. But we wanted them to be healthy so they could pay rent to this developer who's doing the parking lots for the community. Now people are getting home to eat dinner with their family instead of sitting in the car waiting for a parking that's never going to happen till 10 o'clock at night and then get a ticket because they got sick of it and parked at a hydrant anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
life, man. I remember it well.
Yeah. I moved to the neighborhood in 1998. I lived on Cooper Street between Academy and 204. And I remember Dykeman. It was like, I was always bummed out because it was quiet. Yeah, it was quiet. But there was a wide sidewalk. And I was just like, I like also grew up in Europe for many, many years as a kid. And so like, I had this affinity for, eating outside and having like sidewalks. And I was always like, amazed at what a waste that whole block was all the way down to Payson, because it was like, wow, like you could have some really nice things and the park is right here and it's beautiful. So yeah, I think it's a great
I had
thing that
traveled to
happened.
Europe, and what you just said, I used in my argument for the outdoor cafes, especially
Wow.
the
Yeah.
Moana. I said, and I actually, is anybody listening to this? I actually fabricated a fact because I wanted to win the argument. And I said, well, folks, if you look at Europe, are people committing crimes around outdoor cafes? In fact, 95% of all outdoor cafes around its immediate vicinity doesn't have any crime. And right now, that block has a lot of crime. Put an outdoor cafe, the crime will have to go away because you have witnesses everywhere. And they were like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we're voting for the outdoor cafe. And so the Mama Juana Outdoor Cafe and all those outdoor cafes kind of came through that argument. But I said, we want to replicate a European scene, whether you're in
Yeah.
France or you're in Italy or in Spain, you're in anywhere in England. When there's an outdoor cafe, people are jovial, people are
Yeah.
happy, and it's fun, and so no matter where you travel, to us Americans or us New Yorkers, we're like, wow, look at those like 200 people scrunched in together into this little space in an outdoor cafe. But I pushed for it because I really believed that it tempered crime
It
and it
does.
I
brought
think you're right. I think you're
stability to
right.
economic development. And that's what
Yeah.
was happening. And we also supported 809. That,
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember
let me
809.
take it back. Repubblica before
Oh,
809.
That's right.
yeah.
Before
Yeah.
809.
Yeah.
And the
And
former are there.
it's wild because Quisqueya Plaza has become such an important, like, it is the heart of the community now in so many ways. We do so many activations there, and that's all because of the work you did. So thank you for that,
Culture,
man.
music.
Yeah.
And also tell us about you. You were at the beginning of NOMA as well, the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance. What was that about?
Well, actually, NOMA awarded me in the 20th anniversary of the Art Stroll for being one of the founders of the Art Stroll. And it was at the United Palace. And I said, I accepted the award, and I said, thank you for recognizing that I'm one of the founders of the Art Stroll. Or they wrote like he's a founder of the Art Stroll. And I said, let me make that correction for everybody right here, right now. I accept this award on behalf of the people who started the Art Stroll, and I will not take full credit for it. It was myself, Luis Miranda, Martin Collins, and Michael Fiddleson. And without us four, who brought some element to the beginning of the Art Stroll, it probably would have had a hard time working out, right? As the chair of the community board, I was able to use the bully pulpit or the microphone or the podium to push the art scene. Luis Miranda agreed to put arts on the cover of the Manhattan Times 52 weeks a year. Michael was the editor, promised to cover art and put art in the local newspaper all the time. And Marty Collins, who I give a pair of shoes to every other Christmas because he runs through his shoes and puts holes in them,
Right.
by plastering and posting all the information and going to all these businesses and talk to them, we're the one who's able to enroll all these local businesses and pass all this information out to all these. So all of us had a role, and we always pushed. It was really funny. I ended my talk and I said, I remember when we would get artists together and tell them that we wanted to do this Arts Economic Development Partnership, and we wanted to call it the Art Stroll. And sometimes they would be pessimistic and they'd be like, I don't know if this thing's really going to come off the ground. What are these guys doing? And I remember telling them, hey guys, let's do this. Let's stick with this. And just imagine if we could be back in 20 years and say, look what we've done. Well, look what we've done. And
Yeah.
so 20 years, it's been now it's like 22, 24 years. And after we started the Art Stroll, we needed to create an entity to kind of take it over because there was too much for the community board and the Manhattan Times to take on, anymore. And what happened is Luis and I were on the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone board, and we received that the Empowerment Zone board is supposed to help the arts as well. And they gave a $1 million contribution to Harlem Arts Alliance, a $1 million contribution to Association of Hispanic Artists in East Harlem. So we started pounding the pavement. Hey, we need $1 million in Washington Heights as well to start the organization. And then they finally agreed, and we created the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance, and I was asked to be the first chair of the board. And I was there for the first 7 years. And now NOMA is going into its 20th year as well.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so to me, I take great pride, but I don't stop and look back and just keep rolling with so we started NOMA, and Luis and I, I'll never forget, it was Sandra's interview. We were interviewing Sandra Garcia Betancourt,
I love
and
her. She's awesome.
yeah, and Luis and I were interviewing her and somebody else, and I started speaking in Spanish, and she goes, "I'll never forget. I'm looking at this guy saying, he kind of looks Latino, but he has this weird ass name, and he's speaking like a Dominican. I can't figure him out."
You sound just like her. You did a good impression too, by the way.
Now, we're very close. We're very close. I love
She's
Sandra.
amazing. She's amazing.
She's amazing, right? And so she was a phenomenal ED for 7 years. So we built this organization. We gave out $75,000 in grants, unheard of for a brand new not-for-profit in the arts. $75,000 for local artists to complete projects, to give them the tools to work on their beautiful projects. And then Washington Heights, and it was like, boom, because arts are like seeds that dream beneath the snow.
Love that. That's a poem right there. That's a haiku.
I'm not going to take credit from that. That was Khalil Gibran said.
That's
like,
beautiful.
Like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, our hearts yearn for the spring. And so the thing is, artists are like seeds, and all you needed to do was water those seeds, and the flowers were going to grow, and our community was going to look more beautiful. We just didn't have that. We didn't have that mechanism. And NOMA became the umbrella arts organization for the whole district. And so we knew that if we help the arts, things are going to get more beautiful. I'll never forget, so that was really important. And then it was to bring people uptown, right? And let me tell you something, because I have to mention this, because you said to me, is there anything you want to mention that people don't know? The first resolution I ever passed as the chairman of Community Board 12 was the city of New York could not use our tax dollars to create maps of Manhattan that cut off at 96th Street or 125th, 45th, because those maps, and it was
They
all
literally are erasing our community.
Hey, I said, it was the Giuliani administration, and I said, you're using our money to undermine us. You're using our money to erase us, to undermine our economic development, to undermine our historical, sites and tourism sites. Well, you're basically forcing everybody to go to Central Park and South, like we're dangerous or we're scary. And people used to say, "Where you from?" I said, that's the Bronx, right? And we're like, no, it's part of Manhattan. But they didn't know that, because every map that they remember, the stickers in the back of the taxis stopped at 96th Street or 110th Street, or the city guide. I remember negotiating with Christine Nichols, who was Giuliani's girlfriend at the time, and she was in charge of City Guide magazine. And she said, we don't have room. The thing is not so big. I said to her, then do a fold out page. With our tax dollars, but don't you dare do a tax. Don't you dare, do a map that cuts our community out, or else you're undermining us literally. And so we were able to ensure that the city stopped producing those maps, and travel, tourism, everything started really doubling and tripling from then on. But we had to promote it with good arts, and we had to tell our cultural centers, get ready, the wave is coming. And I think that that's something that we really, really helped. But I take pride in that a lot, because
you should. That's an incredible story. That's really amazing. I had no idea. I mean, I think that's like, it's always baffled me why they did that, but I commend you. They weren't proud of
us. Look, they weren't proud of us. And we said to them, you're under the impression that tourists want this like packaged New York City, Broadway, tall buildings. You're under the impression that they don't want Latino food. You're under the impression that they don't want soul food. You're under the impression that they don't want, to go see Grant's Tomb, Riverside Church, the Apollo, all the different iconic places in Spanish Harlem and Central Harlem, and they don't want to see the Marshmallow Mansion or the Cloisters. Or, when they went to the Cloisters because it was part of the Met, they just took the train right up to 1th, got into the Cloisters and Fort Tryon Park, then came right back. And then they jumped on the train and skipped over our community again. oh wow, this is really beautiful. What is
Or
that up there?
experience
It's
an
the
actual
Palisades.
immigrant community. Experience what an actual immigrant community feels like that's thriving instead of
Listen
like a
to
little. I mean, look, I love Little Italy, nothing against Little Italy, but there's no Italians really living in Little Italy anymore. It's just not a thing anymore.
It's just restaurants. Yeah, no, you're right.
I mean, I hate to say it, but
Right. No, but that was essential, I thought, to promote economic development, to promote our tourism sites, and to really just fairness. When I chaired a community board, what I discovered was the way to get to the city commissioners was I just said, they go, well, we're going to build this children's playground with this surface here. And I said, I'd say, excuse me, yeah. Is that the same surface that you're using in the Charles Street renovation of that playground? I walked by it the other day and I took a picture for myself to make, to 'cause I realized we're building a children's playground. And I walked by 2 other children's playground, one in Chelsea and one in the West Village. And I noticed the surfaces are different. And they're like,
Mm,
and I go, we want
uh,
the same surface. Don't
mm.
treat us any
yeah,
worse than you
yeah.
treat
You
the
know,
other
you,
Manhattanites.
you know what's so funny about that, Ziad? That what I realize is the fact that you're in the room makes the difference, right? And sometimes it's not even malicious, right? It's just they don't think about us, and the fact that that's why we need more Ziads, right? But it's interesting, right? Because I began broadcasting Uptown Collective in 2010, right? And what are the phrase that I came up with based off the Harlem Renaissance was the Uptown Renaissance, right? But what I realizing right now as I talk to you, a lot of what I was talking about, you personally had a hand in making, right? NOMA, Dykeman Strip, the Shabazz Center, right? You had so much hand in what became the Uptown Renaissance. So it's like I've always been proud to know you. I've always been like, a friend and a fan of yours. But now it's like as I'm talking to you, I'm like, damn, this man is instrumental in so much of what makes Uptown now. Like, you know what I mean? Like Uptown is the center of the Manhattan in a lot of ways, center of New York City in a lot of ways. And it's amazing that, my friend that has also put me on several times, is behind it all. So I'm just kind of like, wow, that's like it's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's, I never did anything alone, obviously. I always had a team. I always had people I trusted around me. You wish you have people that you trust around you that you could work with and team up with on good projects. A lot of time, people don't understand the system and how to manipulate it to convince them to do the right thing. I never thought I was advocating. I thought I was, hey, I'm going to lead you for you to do the right thing. Because by doing this to us, you're stabbing us in the back. And that's not cool. But we're going to call it out in public so you could go and fix the path that you're taking, which is like, really the city was screwing Northern Manhattan. I don't care how you take it. That's how it was. Maybe
Yeah.
they thought they were protecting tourists. Maybe they thought they couldn't handle culture, But the thing is we're saying, no, we're good people. We're hardworking people. And we have a lot to see and a lot to learn from. And we want to learn from you and we want to benefit. We want a mutual benefit just like everybody else is getting one. And so it's really kind of, but we're working with people. Like my executive committee and the people that I worked with on the community boards were phenomenal. The people that my staff at WHDCs are phenomenal. It's like I always try to be around good people. And, what I tell my staff at WHDC is I say, guys, the coolest thing is to put your head on the pillow at night and smile, knowing that you're like Santa Claus 365 days of the year, not just one day. 365. And you guys have to think, and we have to think collectively of ways and how we can benefit our community. And I think that also, listen, I took leadership courses and stuff like that. I'm not here trying to take credit. If I don't do it, a bad leader is a person like Trump, but he wants to take all the credit when something's good, and he wants to defray all the credit when it's not good, right? No.
Yeah.
It's like you have to say, I'm going to work with great people and we're in this together. And that's what I
And
told
you're
the
clear.
artist. That's what I told the artist 20 years ago. That's what I tell my staff today. And by the way, if you don't nurture good leadership too, right? It's not about do what I tell you to do. It's let's do this together, learn from it, and then you're going to take over at some part. So a lot of the people that we work with are leaders in the community in a variety of different sectors, right? Because we learned together and we grew together. And, it's funny that you say that because, what you said led earlier is that I was in a like I sat in for somebody at a meeting today in Washington Heights, and I didn't know 3/4 of the room, but I knew the OGs, right? I know the Maria Lunas, I know the Steve Simons, I know the Marty English, and I knew those people. And I saw the Helen Morick, I was like, whoa, she's an OG to my OG, right? And so we were in a meeting, and they were talking about developing new buildings. This org was talking about building, and they were like, "Oh, we want to help the community in this way and this way." And I was kind of stupefied because I was going, "We did that. We've been here. We've done that. There are documents that list so we think we could help the community in this way." I was, like I once signed off on something with a 25-point kind of demand letter, but it turned out to be an agreement, right, with an institution that talked about how you could help the community. Why don't you look at that as a menu and say, oh, we can take 15 of these things and work. The other ones, they might slow down the project. They cost too much, whatever it is to you. But at least you could go back to history. And then Maria Luna grabbed me at the end of the meeting, and she said, Ziad, the thing that worries me is a lot of people who are not aware of what, the wheel that we created a long time ago. Like they're trying to recreate it one at a time when we already have a really good working wheel. They just have to go back and reference it. Right. And that's something that's really important because a lot of new people, probably like I did when I was young, right, is I probably thought, here's a brilliant idea. But of course, somebody did it 30 years earlier. You know what I mean? And nowadays, it's the same thing. There's a lot of work that we did a long time ago. And I find myself at meetings with people who are oblivious to a lot of the work we did, right, that got us to where we were. But it's important for leadership to know, like, what happened before you. Like, if somebody's building a building, I'd be like, did anybody build an as-of-right building in this community before? Could somebody look into that? Oh, yeah. You get Wayne Benjamin will be like, of course we did, and so on and so forth, right? And I actually, if you ask Wayne Benjamin, he'll say, this guy stalked me for a month until he forced me, knocked on my door in my house with a pen and was like, sign this, you're coming on the community board, whether you like it or not, But I realized he was an MIT planner and architect, and he lived in our district. I was like, we have nobody with your knowledge on our community board, and we need that. And I appointed him. I broke a rule, actually, an unspoken rule, and appointed him as the chair of the land use committee, the most powerful committee, in his first year. You didn't give a first-year person a chair. But my argument was, when Wayne Benjamin opens up his eyes in the morning, he has more knowledge about, he was the Harlem CDC executive director at the time. He has more knowledge about zoning, land use, ULURPs, everything than all of us put together. Would anybody
you're the ultimate dot connector, man. I'm kind of blown away by that, man. Before we let you go, I gotta ask you. We gotta bring this up. How you feel about Zoran, man? What's your thoughts? What does he bring to the table? Because we're super excited. I'm super excited, over the moon.
How many people listen to this?
Well, we get about 20K now a month, right? Something like that.
I didn't say this. He did.
Okay.
I was standing with Robert Jackson at an event in Queens. They said, Assemblyman Zead Ramadan, and he goes on the stage and he says, about 10 years ago, I sat down with this Muslim dude running for office, and I said to him, I'm trying to decide whether I should go into politics or not. And he said to me, absolutely. I think you got what it takes. And I remember what I said to him. I said,
that was you? Wow, that's amazing.
He said, and the dude inspired me to get into politics. I was in college and I was trying to decide what direction to go in. And he said, and he basically inspired me to get into politics, and that was Zead Ramadan. And I was like, what? And he walked over and shook my hand. I said, hey, man, pull down your mask. And he pulled down his mask, and he had this beard, right? Because of COVID. I was like, you're that skinny kid. I said, you're that skinny kid that asked me, should you run for office? And I said, I remember what I said to you exactly. I said to him, you have a weird name, but so do I. And in post 9/11, New York City with a
Mhm.
weird name and being a Muslim is a challenge. That's what I was going through that in my 2013 campaign at that time. I thought I was very qualified, but people with my name, no matter what, all the things that I did for the community,
Mhm.
I was going to be now that's to your first question, Octavio, when
Yeah.
you said, have you ever felt any kind of thing? Well, I thought my credentials spoke for themselves, and a lot of people knew that, or else Bill Lynch would not have accepted me as a client, the great Bill Lynch. And yeah, I didn't fare well in that election because I had this weird name in post 9/11 America. And I said to him, but you have to transcend that. You have to be a reflection of your hard work and your sincerity for the community. Join every organization in your community, but run in a place where there's a lot of people who are similar to you. Not like me. I ran in a community with no Arabs, so that was a dumb thing. If I ran in Bay Ridge, it might have been a different story, right? With all the Arab community there, or a story around Steinway. There's a lot of Arabs there. It could have been different because my name would have been familiar, not
Right.
unfamiliar. And so I
Right.
said to him, but one thing that I said I remember was that your ability, your eloquence, and your ability to explain highly complex situations to the layperson is off the charts.
He's the greatest communicator the Democratic Party's ever had.
excellent.
Ever.
Somebody said Obama, and they said, no, this guy's better. Somebody said
Better.
better. And I was
Better.
like, that's crazy. So
Better. He's
I
better.
said to him, bro, you're in college and you're talking to me like this? I said, I got into politics into my 30s. I'm running for office in my mid 40s, and you're better than me right now. So I plead with you, stay in it,
That's
because
amazing.
ability to talk about very
Wow.
difficult situations, and you're going to handle. I said, remember, you're a Muslim in New York City. You're going to be attacked, but I don't know anybody at your age that can do what you do right now. So stick with it, and God willing, you'll do good work for the community. And that's really what I said. By the way, don't change, because you're going to be hyped out, but don't let greed, lust, money, power, any of that thing change you. And if you change, you're going to lose. And he called me up before where he ran. He says, Z, I'm thinking about running for mayor. And I said to him, bro, if you talk about those hard issues, and you talk about the hard issues that New Yorkers care about, and you tell the truth that New York is goddamn expensive, that nobody can afford anything. In our decade, 50,000 people moved to the Western Bronx from Washington Heights and Inwood to try to get cheaper rent. I saw that. Adonis was was the council member at the time, and he and I, and his district was going to have to go into West Harlem. Western Bronx, because part of the Dominican community was like migrating to the Western Bronx because of the cost of living. So we knew that was happening. And so I said to them, you have to talk about the hard things. If you cover those issues that really mean things to hardworking New Yorkers, and don't be scared of that, right? And challenge them, be a man. And I said, it's going to be, and I don't mean be a man like be a man. I just mean like have a stiff chin, because people are going to be punching at you all day long. Stand your ground, stick up for the people, the working class, and the people who make New York, New York. And I said, and no matter whether you win or lose, you put those conversations at the table, then you're worth every penny that I invest into you or anybody else invests into you, because the goal is to put those conversations on the table to support the issues of justice, of hardworking New Yorkers who are suffering and fleeing New York, dime a dozen. You do that, you got my vote. And so that's how I feel about them.
That's
Dude,
incredible.
you never cease to amaze me. You never
That's
cease
incredible.
to amaze me. Like what? That's amazing.
Well, listen, I know. Look. We've been on for an hour, 20 minutes, but I don't want to let you go yet. I want to ask you, first of all, I want to see if I can maybe break some news here. I mean, first, I want to ask you, what does 2026 look like for WHDC? That's my first question. And part of that question is, and Led agrees with me, Uptown is going to be missing the night market. And I know that you had, a lot to do with bringing that night market and making it what it was. I mean, There's a team, and you worked with
Marco.
yeah, Marco, and but we want something like that coming back. Is what do you have to give to us for 2026? What can you tell us?
So, yeah, I was proud to have, gone to the Bronx night market, met him, and said to him, "How'd you like to do this, but 10 times bigger in a cooler neighborhood?" And he goes, "Are you crazy? I can't get any politics done. Their community board is this, not." I was like, "We can get it done. I just need to get people out of their houses during COVID. And we'll help you out. We'll partner together to make sure that partner together, meaning like I'll help in any way that I can. Obviously, the business model and everything is all him. And we were just going to be sponsors, and we were going to get the word out, and we're going to tell all these organizations and tell the community, convince the community board." I remember telling Community Board 9, if you don't approve this guy really quickly, Brooklyn is pulling him by the hair. And I said, so please, let's support this initiative. And then it was wildly beyond our expectations. The first day, 5,000 people. The second day, 10,000 people. And it's been I don't think they've ever dropped under 5,000 people for the past 5 years. So he said that he wants to end it. So we're in conversation about trying to do something for 2026 that, we love it when our community and people who look like us from our community get out and have a great time. I took a walk with the judge in Vosa Rivers. Vosa Rivers, people don't know, besides being like the arts impresario and the guru of Northern Manhattan, was a retired cop.
Oh.
And when we walked through the Bronx night market, Vosa, with his very soft voice, in front of me and the judge, turns to Marco and says, "I don't see police here. There's a lot of people, hundreds of people here. I don't see one cop." He says, "We like the vibe better when they're not." It's like, you ever see Barfly?
No.
Okay, you have to see Barfly. It's a great movie. Mickey Rourke should have won an Oscar for it. Barfly. But there was a line that he said. They said something about cops, or they said something about government, or they said something about authority. He goes, it's about Blutowski, the writer, how they discovered him, right? So
okay.
He goes, "Well, I don't mind them much, but I like it better when they're not around." So he basically, it's not that we don't like cops or we don't like support and they're defending our community. It just made sense that they be at the perimeter of the thing, making sure that everybody comes in is cool, and that they're at the ends in case of anything happens. But if not, walking through the thing kind of like, it's like, why are you making us feel? I went to Chicago and I went to Detroit. I went to Greektown and I went to another place. And let me tell you, they had how the ice guys look, but they had armor. I mean, bulletproof vests, big ass guns, and they're walking through thinking that they're making people feel safe. And let me tell you something, I felt unsafe. I'm like, you got a machine gun walking through a crowd. Let's say somebody does something. What are you going to do? Shoot up the crowd? So I was like, I don't want this dude around. Please stay on the perimeter, and intimidate bad people from walking in at all, or intimidate bad people who have a plan to do something bad by just being a deterrent. And in 5 years, I don't think they've had one serious incident. Not one. Yeah. And I think that's fantastic. And we're going to do something in 2026, hopefully to continue to figure out ways to get the community out, to be enriched, to be educated, to enjoy Northern Manhattan, because the coolest place in the world.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
Number one in the entire world. And Ziad, you have a lot to do with it, man. So thank you so much, brother. Thank you for being on the show. I think you were so good. We got to do a part 2 at some point, brother, because I don't think we covered it all.
No, we certainly didn't.
My pleasure being with you guys.
Thank you, Ziad. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you so much. Before we let you go, Pete, please, audience, subscribe to this show.
Oh, that's right. And we didn't mention it today. Please
subscribe
to the show, y'all.
Subscribe to the show.
You guys are getting the real right here, man. This is where it's at. Right.
No, this is great. And what you always say is this, what we're doing right here is historic. we're preserving the history of our community. And Ziad,
Right.
man, like I'm just happy that I can be a part of bringing your story to our community because, you know, you moved here at 5. You grew up here. You're from here. You're born or raised.
Mhm.
Maybe not
Listen,
born, but raised. You know, like
real quickly, I
Yeah.
tell
incredible.
people I'm a Palestinian, I'm a Muslim, I'm an Arab. I was born in Kuwait, Jordanian citizenship. I'm American, but my essence is I'm a New Yorker from Washington Heights.
That's
Yes,
right.
sir.
That's
Yes,
what I
sir.
am.
That's right. That's hustle squared right there. I love it.
It comes through all the time.
That's right. Ziad, thank you so much, brother.
Thanks for joining us in this episode of Uptown Voices, brought to you by 181 Cabrini, your neighborhood bistro just steps away from the North Walk of the George Washington Bridge. Use the code Uptown Voices Season 1 for your discount. And to stay up to date on the latest in Uptown, you can follow Uptown Collective on Instagram, Facebook, and X. If you're watching Uptown Voices on YouTube, don't forget to smash the subscribe button and to give us a like. And don't forget, we also need financial contributions from listeners like you to produce, improve, and expand our content. To contribute, please scan the QR code on the screen. Until next time, this has been Uptown Voices.